welcome along to Circle Time, the Early Years podcast. I'm Glenn Denny, and I'm really delighted that I've got a returning guest on the podcast. We last met him, I think it was in season one, the very, very big season when we were just getting established. And he was talking to us all about PE in the early years. Well, I'm delighted to say that he's back with us, but I'm going to say he's on his own, but he's not on his own, if you get what I mean. Josh Candy, welcome back to the podcast.
So much for having me back. And yeah, it's great to be here again and talk about this next sort of journey that I'm on.
Yeah, definitely. So your journey. So the last time we spoke to you, you were working for a particular nursery group, and you were kind of their head of PE, and you go in and kind of into the different settings, and you had all these activities and like the different sessions planned. You're still doing that, but not with them. So where are you now?
Yeah, so yeah, last time we met, I was working for a large chain as their full-time employed PE teacher. We spoke a lot about kind of the benefits of having that employed PE
Hmm.
teacher involved, and that I did that for 8 years. I kind of made it my own, and I knew that it was kind of definitely the right path that I wanted to be on. And then it was back end of last year, back end of 2023, I lost my dad, and that kind of
Hmm.
put me on a bit of a navigation path of what am I doing? Gave you one of those moments of time to reflect, sit back a little bit,
Hmm.
work out kind of the best routes. And I think for me, it was a bit of that and a bit of sound advice, and also a bit of ballsiness to kind of take a
Hmm.
plunge, really. And yeah, I made the decision to kind of do what I love, which was working in the early years with that age group, doing PE, and kind of just taking it on my own and to try and grow that naturally
Hmm.
because I was still doing something I really enjoyed. I was quite fortunate enough that the company that I worked for decided to keep me on in terms of contracting me back,
Hmm.
which was great because I still got to keep the relationship with the staff and the children, which was most important. And yeah, it's just been kind of me doing the exact same thing, but as you said, on my own now, as early as PE, which is the name of my company, does what it says on the tin. Kind of wanted to keep it
Hmm.
as as kind of clear cut as possible, and really just trying to build that portfolio now with other nurseries that share the same ethoses, work with companies that really want to enhance that side of
Hmm.
their practice. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, and if I'm 5 months into it, five or 6 months into it now. It's gone in some aspects, it's gone really quickly, but
Hmm.
in other ways, it's been like mind-blowingly crazy to become part of the business world, which I had absolutely no idea
Yeah.
about whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think as well, it's, when we were talking previously, we said that, it was great that you were able to share your knowledge, your expertise, your training, your skills with your group. But also, I think we talked about how it can be quite difficult for some settings, even though it's a prime area in the EYFS, that physical development, that physical exercise part isn't always understood and used by practitioners within the setting. So it's really good that they can come in and hire your skills and like you've kind of widened it now that your reach, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing. I think it is just trying to get the what I made sure, like evidently sure with starting this business was that I didn't want to go in there to make as much money as possible, to get as many sessions as quickly as I possibly could. I kind of went in with the intent of I want to keep this as natural as possible,
Hmm.
so that nothing is kind of lost from why I've done it. To which I feel like I am doing now. I'm able to balance the two, so we're keeping a very fine line between exactly why I done this and what I was doing beforehand to trying to grow it, which is quite difficult. But yeah, you're right. The physical development side of things is one of those areas of the UIFS that it just gets left. I don't think there is anyone who has a solid answer as to why. I think we can speculate on many different things, whether it come
Mm,
down to whether we come down to naivety around it, whether we come down to a lack of resources. Um, but there is another element of it where when you've got someone, it doesn't even have to be from a PE perspective, this or a sport perspective, but let's say you work in a nursery and you've got someone who is fluent in Spanish, and they sit the children down in a group activity and they do something related to Spanish
hmm.
words. That's not a planned thing. That's just something that you're using the
Yeah.
expertise of someone who has that as a background, as is confident and has that ability to be able to bring something to the table. You wouldn't look at that and think, "Oh God, no, we can't do that," because I don't know, you just wouldn't. You would utilize those things,
Hmm.
and I guess that's where I'm trying to kind of fill that gap now from being full time employed and being somewhere who has that experience to now navigate in the world of budgets and things that kind of the barriers that you come across. It's what I'm really trying for early years to become is not seen exclusively as an external provider. What I want us to be seen as is an extension to a current
Hmm.
offering.
Yeah.
So we're an extension to what you do. So the nurseries we currently work at, we get to know the staff, we get to know the nursery, we get to know the children, we get to understand what they do, what each nursery has their own little sort of unique USP or something that really
Hmm.
kind of makes them stand out, whether that be a curriculum or whether that be a an event or an act or something that they put on. And what we want to try and do is buy into that as well. So we want the nursery to feel like they can come to us and we don't just turn up for a session and then we leave
Yeah.
and it be a different coach every single time you come in. I've got myself and I've just managed to recruit, in my opinion, the only other candidate in the UK that would be suitable for the early years world. He's had just as much experience as I have. He's incredible at what he does. So the two of us together, we want to work with those nurseries
Hmm.
to bring out the best in the children, and the staff then can trust us. They know the face that they're seeing. It's consistent. We can give them feedback around things like physical development. We can talk about children's well-being from a different perspective. But the job that's easier for us to do is the sport and the PE and stuff like that. So that becomes something more natural, which kind of enhances the everyday of a nursery life rather than having to, oh, I'm not trained in any way to do sport or PE, so I'm going to just try and do a little session here and there with no experience
Hmm.
and then feel that's the barrier. With us, what we're trying to do is kind of block that barrier. We're kind of creating that little way around it. We've got the experience. We can come in and do this, and we can help with all the other things that you have going on at nursery and keep it all kind of tied in together.
I think so. I, listening to the way you were describing it there, it's like you're trying to be like an extension of their staff team. So
Mm.
it's not that you are, like you say, this external service that's brought in, you do your session, you go. It's like you've got to know, and I think this is really, really important as well. If you're going to get the best out of, the session with the children, I think it's got to be that bit where you are an extension of the staff team, where you kind of come in, the staff, that, when you're doing a particular set of skills and there's a particular child, because there's always a particular child, isn't there? That that the staff members have got your back. If you look over to them, they'll know, oh yeah, I need to go and help that little one. But then, because of that deep communication, that link that you've got with each other.
Yeah, and that can't be faulted in any way. I mean, we
Mm.
all know within early years, like I said, I've worked in early years for 8 years. 2 of those years, I was a practitioner, plus many other roles as well. So I fully understand what it's like to be a practitioner. I fully understand how it is on a day-to-day basis. So that's what kind of gives or gave me that experience to kind of build what early years
Hmm.
PE represents. And I think it's so important to have that trust and have that understanding that you've got someone who's delivering a service, but also understands kind of the general day-to-day life of an early years
Hmm.
setting, understands the age group with those children, and we get to know those kids in such a way where we can almost give the staff advice, or we can tell them, well, look, with this child, we know that they may act a particular way. Maybe we can try and change the way
Hmm.
that they learn. Let's bring them outside a bit more. They do really well when they come outside, or the children that don't really maybe speak as much when they're indoors. As soon as you bring them to an outside environment, you see them really come to life,
Yeah.
and we're able to kind of give that other side to that coin. And even in these 5 months that I've been doing this and working with new nurseries, brand new nurseries, new teams, new children, I've been able to continue with that same ethos. And when I walk into new nurseries now, like I've worked there for however many years, and
Hmm.
I'm able to kind of give that advice. And I mean, yeah, that's what we want.
Think as well, like, from I'm going to say it from like almost a business perspective, your unique selling point is the fact that you were a practitioner. And I remember having this conversation with you before that you were a practitioner, so you understand what it's like on the floor, caring for the children day in, day out, all their different needs and their abilities and their skills and all that. So I think for you that is a unique selling point that you can understand what it's like so that you're there working with the children, but you're also, yeah, working with the staff as well. And that's really important because they're going to be the ones that are going to continue when a child comes up to them after you've gone, say, "Oh, can we do that again?" They're like, "Well, yeah, I can because, Josh has shown me what to do."
Yeah, I mean, first point, I was never a practitioner out of choice. This was all like post COVID time. So
Hmm.
it was kind of almost a situation where I was put into without having choice, but made the most of that with
Hmm.
understanding, with learning the UIFS, with getting my qualification, albeit it's only level two, but still I got that
Hmm.
childcare level two, just to kind of bolster that understanding and that knowledge. And it's because of doing that, I've been able to better my own practices with PE and sport, and I think we spoke about it in our previous podcast. So I won't go into too much detail, but it shapes what my sessions are.
Hmm.
At the moment, we're doing football. We're on week 3 of football this week, and our intent is dribbling and it's avoiding defenders. Never once do we really explicitly talk to the children about that kind of terminology and wording. We use it through such an imaginative story based play. So, like you said, we're talking about penguins here with the football. So the children use footballs as their eggs. They're moving around the ice. The cones that are spiky, like not spiky, but pointed cones, are the sharks. They're the shark fins. We're putting the children into a story. So
Yeah.
they become the penguins. They have their eggs. They're moving across the ice and they're avoiding sharks. That's what they're doing. What we're seeing is completely different, but they can then go back to their parents, or the staff that are watching can understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. The room leader of one of the preschool rooms that I teach at last week came up to me and said, "We've taken Poppy the penguin with one of the lessons, and we've been doing our own indoor activities with Poppy the penguin and using. They've been scrunching up paper to make it like eggs, and they've been using their feet to move the ball. That wasn't an intent from me. I didn't ask them to do that.
Hmm.
That was just something that they've taken from seeing the session and doing it themselves and enhancing that understanding. And the children were really excited about that because they seem to love that whole story side of it. So yeah, exactly like you're saying, the staff can learn something from it as well. The children get excited, and then it kind of just gathers like a big snowball.
Hmm. I was going to say, is it going to be a snowball? I thought, there's a bit of a penguin link going on.
Good thought. Yeah.
But no, that is the important bit as well, isn't it? Yeah, you're using all these free skills almost for football, but I think if you said football to a children, they just go around kicking the ball, and that way your session's just gone. Because been there, done that. I said, "Oh, let's have a kick about with the ball." Yeah, it's gone. But you're bringing them into that world, that beautiful world of imagination that children have got. And, Poppy the penguin is moving the egg around, and this is what we're doing. And you're bringing those skills in, but in a way that children can understand.
Yeah, and That has only come from experience. That
Hmm.
has my background, as we've spoken about before, was secondary PE. I've worked in primary PE.
Hmm.
I've done football coaching for my whole entire life, pretty much. So I've been able to use those skills and understanding of the sport. But then where I've worked in early years for the past 8 years, I've been able to adapt it to a way where, okay, I know that these children are going to engage, and we use our stories at the beginning of all of our sessions, which is that initial grip. So
Hmm.
the stories are all related to the activity that we're doing. Um, so everything flows. Everything flows, and it's not, as I said, it's not just as soon as I turn up to a lesson, I set up. Okay, we're going to do this today. We get it done. We say goodbye. We leave. Like that is what an external company is kind of not known for, but it is what happens. And I've seen
Hmm.
it firsthand, and I've seen some amazing coaches come in and do sessions. I've also seen the complete opposite,
Yeah.
and I think that's what we're trying to offer is like our preschool sessions are an hour long, and they're an hour. Not it's purely because if I did it less than an hour, I'd have to cut out something like the story at the beginning. I'd have to
Hmm.
cut out the free time at the end. I'd have to cut out the imaginative story that we create.
Yeah.
It's not possible. Our toddler sessions are 45 minutes for the same reason. We kind of just break things down a slightly less detail. But again, our preschool program, our toddler program, and we've got a baby program now, which is our little learners, our active tots, and our rising stars.
Hmm.
That was only made last week, so I need to keep remembering to instead of baby, toddler, preschool, it's those programs. But all three of those programs link with each other. So if we're doing football, they're all doing football for that week. If that week one is all about dribbling, we're all doing it. The babies are slightly different because what we want there is just an environment. So we want whether we're doing that in their garden or whether we're doing that in their room. We've got the footballs, we've got the goals, we've got music that is all associated with footballs. We'll play a bit of
Hmm.
match of the day in the background, sometimes a bit of free lions, depending on whatever it is. But we're just creating that environment for them. It's not something that they're going to know explicitly, but as they move up into the toddlers, they've got a familiar face with us. They
Hmm.
understand. They know the equipment. They know the area. They know the structure. So then they move from toddlers, where they're doing the same thing as the preschool, but slightly doled down a little bit. And then the following year, when they become a preschooler, they've already got all of this years of common practice, of fun, engaging, exciting, imaginative play that when they go into preschool, they can thrive. That's why we've
Yeah.
called them the rising stars because that's when they come through. They're rising up, all with the intent of when they go to school, they've already got a benchmark of being confident, being happy. Um, this skills, if they pick it up, they pick it up. If they don't, they don't. What they've got is they've got an enjoyment for doing sport, being physically active, and being happy. And then if they can pick up some skills along the way and understand that when they see a football, they use their feet. When they see a tennis racket, they hold it with two hands. If they that's what we want. We want it to become a journey as opposed to just a session. It's a journey.
Hmm. I get that. I think that's the bit as well. Like because you're now starting with babies and then moving up the way. I think you're building that foundation of skills, but also that foundation of familiarity with you, with the equipment, with the structure of the sessions and what they're doing. And that's all like I mean, I've always likened the early years to a wall, like without your firm foundations, and then your wall on top won't hold. So, I think that's brilliant the way that you've broken it down as well. And it's clear for parents as well to understand, not just the staff, but for parents to understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I think we've had in the past, when I was working at the nursery full time beforehand, is my priority because I was on my own with a chain of 8 nurseries.
Hmm.
The priority was the preschoolers, the school leavers,
Yeah.
which was great, more than capable of doing it. But then the problem is as soon as October rolled around or September rolled around, when you've got the new wave of children who come
Hmm.
up from toddlers, one, they didn't really know me. Two, they'd never done anything like this before, so it was all quite new.
Yeah.
And we found we were spending the first 4 weeks doing kind of introductory sessions, that was a bit like, we need to get this in place now so that by the time we start doing our sports for the rest of the year, the children are a bit more comfortable. But with the new nurseries that we're working at now, what we're finding is we're working with the babies, the toddlers, and the preschoolers. There's no need for a transition because
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
naturally transitioning. So the benefits are for us are obviously the children know us. We don't have to have that whole few weeks of ice breaking games where we're
Yeah.
getting to know them doing that because it's already happened from the youngest of ages.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think the flow between the three and the familiarity for us and the programs as well that we run and the staff as well because we want to get to know. I think that's important. Parents definitely, but staff most importantly because if you can win the trust of the staff,
Hmm.
I think that's your biggest kind of sell because they can then buy into what you're doing. They can then start talking about that stuff. Um, and then naturally that will kind of feed back to the parents.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the bit is uh, listening to it there, it makes perfect sense because you, previously you with just focusing on the preschool, you were I'm not going to say wasting time because it's never wasted time when you're doing something, but there was a lot of that time was taken up with doing all the introductories. You were having to build that foundation quite late on, but
Mm.
now starting earlier, it just makes more sense that it flows through, and those skills are being built over a longer time, so giving children that time and that space to kind of bring these skills in and cement them in their skills and their abilities and their knowledge.
Yeah, and I think it shows with the two nursery chains that we now work with, the two new nursery chains that we work with, bought into that idea as well straight away. There was no question about they wanted it just for a preschool. They wanted the consistency across the board with all of their
Mm,
sessions. So it is like you said, it's literally coming in from your babies to your toddlers into your preschool, and that is something that is quite unique in what we offer as well. With the fact of again, it isn't just aiming towards your oldest children to cut and do like a one-off
mhm,
little session. They're great, but there's no cohesiveness to it. You need to have that kind of all-rounded. What is your intent? Why are we doing it? What are we doing? Um, and it links in with what all our early years settings do naturally anyway.
mhm. It does. So talk me through when you go into a setting, what does an early years PE session from you guys look like?
So let's let's say it as if it's not a brand new set. Let's say it's a normal session. So
Hmm.
we know the children, we know the staff, we've got the area. So our depending on the nurseries, whether they meet us at a local park or whether we do it on site in a garden, or
Hmm.
if the weather's not bad, we do it in a room, is all the same structure. So we have the room cleared. There's music always playing throughout the whole session. So we've always got a little bit of background music. I find the background music helps the children from getting less crazy. It kind of keeps the nice
Hmm.
tone. So we'll always play a bit of music in the background, all related towards theme. We'll sit down, we'll introduce, get to know, like ask children how they are, how was your weekend? How was your holiday? Now, that can go one of two ways. That can either start a 12-minute conversation or it can be complete silence. Um, and then we move on to, okay, what are we doing this week? We'll talk about what we done last week. I will briefly talk about in a simple term as possible what we're doing today. Then we'll meet our character, which is at the moment Poppy the penguin. So Poppy's always hiding in the bag, and the children have to call her
Hmm.
out. And that is the same thing for all the animals that we have. Most of the time, the children come over and will straight away not care about me or or Anthony, our other coach. They'll care about the penguin in the bag.
Hmm.
There's no more important character than Poppy the penguin at the moment. So we'll meet Poppy. We'll talk about what she is and what she does and why she's really good at football. Then we'll get our story read, which at the moment is Mr. Men in the Big Match, which is a great story for football because it's got keywords. They use term like bits of terminology from football.
Hmm.
The pictures are really good because you can see visually what the children are doing. Um, then we'll go straight from our story into a warm up, which consists of stretching, moving. We'll talk about that with the older children as well, why we stretch, why we move, bring that sort of into play. Um, then we'll move on to the key part of our lesson, which is our game, which is our imaginative bit of play.
Yeah.
So we'll put them in that world of imagination. What are we doing today? This is the intent. Depending on what the session is, we might have a couple of them. Um, Always stop for some water. Talk about why we're drinking water as well.
Hmm.
Back on our little mat that we sit on, and then the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes of every lesson or every session is free time. So we have the area that we've been using with all the equipment that we've been using, but letting the children completely be in control of what they want to do within that time. So a lot of the time, the children will naturally copy something that they've already done from the
Yeah.
lesson. So if they're playing football, they will use their feet a lot more. If they use it playing rugby, they'll naturally use their hands a lot more. But we've got music in the background as well. That's when I put on like the disco music, because we'll have certain children that really love having that element of it as well.
Hmm.
Got the other side of it, which is usually like the boys or the rough and tumble group who will be running around going crazy. And then what we've just introduced in the last couple of weeks is clipboard and paper and crayons, because we found that there's a lot of children that actually they love that creative side of it. So after the PE session, where they've done all of that moving, they can
Hmm.
come down onto the mat for the last 15 minutes, clipboard and pen, do some drawing, bringing in their fine motor skills, and just we're just rounding it off, just trying to bring in as much as we possibly can to kind of hit the needs of every child. We don't want
Yeah.
everyone just doing this or you have to do this. We that's the intent we want. If you want to play with the balls, play with the balls. If you want to do some dancing to Frozen, do some dancing to Frozen. If you want to draw on the clipboards, by all means, draw on the clipboards. And then at the end, with like 2 minutes to go, everything's packed away. The children pack it all up for me.
Hmm.
That's all part of the process. And then it's back to back to nursery or back to the rest of the day.
No, it's a really good set. I like the way as well, like at the end, it's they've got that free space, that free time to do what they want to. Normally, like you say, I mean, I can imagine it. A lot of them will want to carry on with the skills that they've been learning, and whether it's consciously or unconsciously, want to go and do that. But also, I like that bit where some of the ones are like, "Well, I've done my physical bit. Actually, I just want to draw," and I love that inclusivity of it as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important. What we found is there was one particular child at one of the new nurseries we worked at. It was probably week three of meeting her. Um, every time there was a pause in any sort of game we were playing, the first
Hmm.
thing she did was picked up the paintbrush from the floor, and she was just there was no paint. She just picked up the paintbrush and would just sort of be painting the wall, doing this, that, and the other. I spoke to the staff member and I said, "Oh, I noticed she's always picking up that paintbrush. Like, is that what she likes to do?" And they said, honestly, if she could have a paintbrush all day, she'd have a paintbrush all day. And that just made me think, okay, what can we do then to try to tailor for her? And then
Hmm.
we were talking, myself and my coach Anthony were talking, and we were saying, okay, what about clipboards, paper? We've got like the early years PE logo. We've got like little stencils of Poppy the Penguin. I'm not a massive fan of stencils, but for this, I'm fine with it. The children can kind of color in, design their own penguin. Then they can take that back to their parents as well. They can take it back to the room. They can continue it where they're there.
It's that talking point as well, isn't it?
It is exactly that, a talking point. And that will again, it all flows. So if we're doing rugby, it will be Sammy the Snake.
Hmm.
It will be a rugby ball. So, and that's the sort of thing I'm constantly evolving. Like yourself, you'd know as well, no matter what you're doing in early years, you're always evolving, you're always learning. There's not a single day where you don't take something on board from something that you've learned. And we learn from the children. As
Oh
much as
yeah.
we try and teach them, we learn from them. So I think that's the key thing is we're constantly trying to use that to kind of keep our practice as relevant as possible to the children.
Yeah, I think that that's key word you use there as well, that relevance as well. Because like you say, we don't sit still long enough in early years because we can't. Like children are growing and developing in different ways. So we have to do the same. So if somebody was wanting to book you guys for a session, what areas are you covering at the moment?
So we work currently down at the moment in South London, so we're around like Kingston and Wimbledon.
Hmm.
We are looking to expand into Croydon and Purley to start with as our next expansion. But my long-term goals for obviously early years PE is to take it across the UK. So we want to be able to reach as many, yeah, we want to be able to reach as many settings as possible.
Hmm.
And I think I don't think it's unrealistic, but it has to happen very naturally as well. Like I said, I can't rush into these things and
No,
it can't be done too soon. I think we're taking the right steps at the moment to be able to bring in that attention, to have the nurseries we're working with really understand what we're doing, grow it here, start doing weekend classes as well, start doing like holiday camps, but for like the younger ages as well, because I
hmm
know that sometimes can be an issue. These are all things in the pipeline. So again, we're only 5 months into this, and it's got to be done quite slowly. But yeah, if you're a nursery owner or manager in the south of London, um, then we are able right now to kind of to fit you in.
I think it's that right thing, isn't it? You're building the capacity without damaging the quality. I think
Yeah.
is kind of what you're doing, which I think's absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, I would love it the whole, I was sat here. I mean, it's podcast, so you can't really see, but I was sat here with fingers crossed, going, "Yes, please be across the whole UK," because I'm up in York, so I need you up here at some point. But absolutely understand that it's building that capacity, building that quality, but getting that message out that it doesn't just have to be like, what do I do? Everything you're doing is what we would naturally do in early years, but because you've got that skill and knowledge behind you, you're getting the very best out of the children, which is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And I think that's that is setting small little goals, small little
Hmm.
plans, focusing on the now and try not to go too far ahead. Again, just like we would in early years, we wouldn't try and think too far ahead. We try and be in the moment
Hmm.
and just make sure that it's right for what we're doing at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, it's been amazing catching up with you, and I'm so pleased that early years P is taking off. It absolutely deserves it. You're just brilliant at it. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us again.
Thanks for having me back on, Glenn. Honestly, your words are too kind. But yeah, feel free, everyone, if you want to check out website as well as earlyyearspe.co.uk. Same Early Years P on all socials. Feel free to get in touch. And yeah, Glenn, thank you so much for having me back on again.
No, Josh Candy, thank you.